it's May 1st, and this is TAW University. I'm a senior KC, and our guest and topic today will be, our topic is Vanguard division and what they do and how they operate. And my guest is Colonel Feener from the Vanguard division. Welcome, Colonel.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here today.
Good to have you. All right, I'd like to start out with a couple of general questions I like to ask everybody. Is first of all, how did you end up in TAW?
Well, I was playing Quake Wars. A friend of mine had given me the game, and a good friend of mine who gave me Return to Castle Wolfenstein way back in 2001. And I've been playing that game for 6 or 7 years. He knew I was interested in that genre. It morphed into Wolfenstein enemy territory, and then he gave me Quake Wars, and I was playing around on a few servers. I found the TAW server. I've been playing there quite often. It wasn't necessarily the best ping in the world, but the people there were the best. That was always good cooperation, good teamwork, fairly friendly banter, chatter on the comms. After playing there for a couple months, one of the guys, Terran Specialist, and another guy, Toddbot, they asked me, how come you haven't joined TAW yet? You really should. And I thought about it and I said, hey, let's give it a shot. So that's how I ended up in TAW.
Great. Let's start out with some of your roles. How did you start out in TAW? What kind of of course, as a member, but then what were some of your early positions?
Well, I started out, I got put onto the Red Dawn platoon in Quake Wars. I'm the North American battalion, and it was a lot of fun. Before I was in any position, I started doing stuff because I'm that kind of person. But, I don't need a position to do stuff. I'll go crazy. If there's a vacuum or I feel like something could be done, I'll just do it. And I started writing up strategies for our platoon. I started hosting after hours matches. Dead On here, he can remember that. You remember that, Dead On? Or I think maybe he's right. But it was a lot of fun. And then after a while, they're like, "Hey, you want to be a fire team leader, an official fire team leader?" So I was promoted to that, and I had a little FL tag after my name. But I mean, it was still just as much fun. And after that, they offered me a position of a head drill instructor for the North American Battalion. That was quite a fun, interesting experience. I got to host optional extra nights every week. The mandatory nights were Sunday, Tuesday, and then I did a night on Thursday for training, and had a lot of fun doing that. Then I became a platoon leader after that. In fact, they even let me platoon lead while I was the head drill instructor, and that was just enormous fun. Leading a platoon, I have to say, is the best experience in TAW. That's the most fun. Anything else beyond that is probably extra work, but platoon leading is just pure butter. It's pure cream, man. It's so much fun. Leading a group of 16 guys around, drawing up strategies, practicing with them on off nights, and gelling together, commanding a unit on the field in the heat of battle. I mean, there's nothing quite like it. After that, pushed me up to EXO, and that's where I probably shined the most, I think. Probably recruited. I checked, and at one point I had over 600 application emails from when I was the NAXO of Quake Wars, and a good chunk of them were mine. But I mean, I used to get criticized by Reinhardt, good old Ryan. He tell me I was doing boot camps off the street like a drug dealer. I'd recruit people, get them in here, give them their boot camp, and pretty much all in the space of an hour. And a little while later, Quake Wars was sitting at 175, and man, it was a good time. It feels good to grow a group. It feels good to build something. I'm a big builder. I like games like SimCity and other games like that because I don't like to tear things down. I like to build them up. After a while, Hook approached me and he's like, "Hey, would you like to become the division officer?" And at first, the only really benefit I could see to is that, hey, I can finally approve these applications. So I could do the whole thing. I could recruit someone, boot camp them, get them in, and approve their app all in one. But I mean, I gradually grew to understand the other parts of that role more, and after that, became division commander, Quake Wars. And finally, after a lot of nudging and budging, I moved over to Vanguard, and that's where we are today.
Well, and of course, all those individual positions prepared you for the next level. Tell me how your thinking overall changed, or has it changed since you first, you got into Quake Wars and started working pretty hard and doing different things. How's your mentality changed, or has it over the last year or two?
A lot of this is to do with the people you work with. As you accept higher and higher positions, the people above you, you interact with them because it's a chain of command. This is the way the chain is supposed to work. An effective chain of command has you interacting, getting advice, getting feedback from the people above you, and then in training and instructing and building up behind you. So as you go higher, you build up below you, and you build a more solid and solid base, and it's like a pyramid that you keep building up, and you make sure that what's below you is strong, and what is coming down from you, you take in and you use. You eat it. It feeds you. It feeds your knowledge and your strength as a leader, and you put that into good use. And I think every time I've gone up in TAW, it's made me a little bit more cognizant of the organization as a whole. My perspective widens each time. And it's like a Venn diagram. You realize that you're part of something bigger and bigger and bigger, and pretty soon you just realize how just behemoth this organization really is, and that's one of its really great strengths.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about Vanguard. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of mention about before Vanguard, what would happen. When I first was in TAW, if a couple guys decided to bring a game into TAW, they would find a couple friends and buddies and start talking about it, and basically they would, if everybody agreed, they'd make a division and they'd promote these guys to lieutenant colonel and a major, and then they would run the show. And shoot, if it launched, fine. If it didn't, well, we had an extra colonel or major laying around with some disgruntled division members. So there wasn't any kind of real system to it. Again, you would just find some people that wanted to bring a game in, and hopefully they had what it took to make a game, and they would launch it, and so sometimes it's successful, sometimes it failed. My early dealings with Vanguard, I was actually one of the games that I started. I actually was brought in to be the DC for Quake Wars, but we were waiting for the game and it wasn't happening, and Vanguard kind of came about at that time. We took Sentinel into the Vanguard, and I always say that we, with the game, well, not Sentinel, what was the name? That game was called, I'm looking for it here in my desk. Anyways, Stalker, that's the name of the game. It was Stalker, and we brought Stalker. We were the first game in the Vanguard, and I always say we didn't fail. We just proved that the game wasn't worthy for the TAW. It played well. A lot of things worked out fine. But if you wanted to change a map, you had to reboot the server, which wasn't really very helpful, or with trying to keep people in your server. So it kind of came about that time, and with this whole formula of trying to test bed a game, and instead of just making it a division. Let me know. Tell me how does Vanguard? Where does it fit in TAW? Who's in your chain of command, and where does it fit?
Well, this is where Vanguard fits in the big map of TAW. Vanguard is essentially a division that it used to be called the Task Force, and I think that was kind of confusing to people, so it was re-clarified as just a regular division. But Vanguard is unique. It is not a regular division in the sense that it functions like a regular division. Vanguard has no direct core command. The core command for Vanguard is Army Command itself. So at the very top of TAW, you have the Commander-in-Chief, and below that you have the Army Commander, who was previously yourself. Now it's Brave. And then underneath that you have Hive, the ALC, and directly the Army Lieutenant Commander. Directly underneath that is Vanguard. That's the chain of command. That's where it fits into TAW. And Vanguard has a unique role in that aspect because it interacts directly with the higher up leadership. And because Vanguard's an important place, all of the decisions that are made in Vanguard are vetted directly at the Army Command and CIC level in TAW, because they really need to have a definite way in and a definite say on every game that comes to TAW, because Vanguard is the future and growth of TAW.
All right. Give me some of the staff positions that you have, different roles that are available or being. I know you're the DC. What are some of the other roles and positions there, and who's got them?
Well, there's a division commander. Underneath that, you have a regular division officer like other divisions. That's filled by King Cheese. And we run those pretty regularly in terms of the roles that are run in a division, like application, approval, discharges, etc. Underneath that, we have a unique position, which is unique only to Vanguard. It exists nowhere else at all. It's called a regional officer. And I've heard Hook describe it as he calls it a battalion officer. I think of it more like a cross between partial division officer, partial battalion officer, because they have TFO level access. They can moderate the forums. They actually have applicant approval and discharge level access. Although, I've actually fine tailored that to be where I allow them to approve applications, but I'm myself and my DO are the only one that we do discharges in Vanguard, just to make sure, and transfers to make sure that everything is kept, in the proper way. Their job essentially is to focus on their region and the battalion officers to help serve the units within Vanguard. Vanguard is a functional, starting place for a lot of units, so everything isn't as smooth and functional as in a regular division. We constantly have new groups forming there. A lot of these guys don't really know what it takes to be a division. It's the job of the regional officer to help myself and King Cheese to function as staff until they can get their own staff up and running, in the absence of spin-up leaders or regular staff within those groups.
All right. Now, since you're doing startup games, how do you monitor and how do you see what's on the future for these different games?
Well, a lot of it is what we call personal recognizance. I'm big into gaming. The guys who are attracted to the positions in Vanguard, they have very A-type personalities, and they're very what you call go-getters. They're always on the lookout. We have forms on the website. If you go to TAW.net, there's a big thing on the button on the right that says Games on the Horizon. You can suggest a new game to TAW. We're always looking at game magazines, game news headliners. We're always looking at the big publishers' websites and the games that are coming out. We have a very, very good track on games that are coming out within any given calendar year from where you are. I mean, if you ask me today what the next year in gaming look like, I could probably sit here and tell you for about 20 minutes exactly what's going on, because that's my job, and we take that very seriously, because gaming is what we're all about here.
All right. So, what kind of rules do you have in place if someone wants to bring a game to Vanguard or even to TAW? Is there a certain type of style? Is there any kind of restrictions?
It's very interesting. We've had a lot of discussions about this lately. We've determined that there are 4 kinds of PC games that fit within TAW, as per our history, our structure, and what we're prepared to do, and the kind of people that we have, and the kind of gaming that we can really support. The 4 kinds of games are first-person shooters, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, otherwise known as MMORPGs, such as World of Warcraft, Star Wars: The Old Republic. Real-time strategy games, such as StarCraft, World in Conflict way back in the day. And the 4th kind of game is a new kind of game. It's something that started in TAW with League of Legends, but has burgeoned out further. And what we're talking about here it's called Multi-Online Battle Arena, otherwise known as MOBA. It's a new type of game that is really just it's quite revolutionary. You can think of it like Diablo 2 was probably maybe the earliest thing you could call a true MOBA. Dota, it was a Warcraft 3 mod that was another major predecessor of the MOBAs. And what we're seeing with that is League of Legends, Bloodline Champions, World of Tanks, and Darkspore. Those kinds of games are MOBAs. So those are the 4 kinds of games that we really are trying to target and bring into TAW. And there are further requirements on to how to each, it doesn't have to just be one of those games. To be successful in TAW, they have to meet a lot of requirements. One, it has to be a game that, can be played with team organization and team atmosphere. It has to be a game that's worthy of TAW with maturity levels. One of the reasons that we didn't necessarily want to bring back All Points Bulletin into TAW was because we felt like the kind of player it attracted wasn't necessarily the mature kind of gamer that we'd want in here. And there are other games as well that we just don't want to bring in due to the kind of community that they might have with them, or maybe the community isn't big enough. So there are other requirements just in being part of those 4.
All right. Well, let's just say someone has basically got all those approvals, or they have a game, and basically the game is something you've been watching. And take me through some of the steps that it takes to get this thing fired up. Or hang on, let's take us through the first steps. Like, I've got this game, I've gone through you, everybody's approved it in chain of command. Take me through some of the leadership and duties and recruiting. What does it take to build this team from the bottom up?
Absolutely. This is essentially, we have what we call 3 phases in Vanguard. Phase 1. Phase 1, the game must be released 1 month of the team creation or earlier. So 1 month or under, we actually do allow teams to form before the game is out, though we try not to make it too far away. One extreme example of this that we have right now is Star Wars: Old Republic. The game isn't slated for several months, but in an experiment to generate more interest, our CSC Hook and our former COC Omega are hosting Friday night meetings for it. Now, we're not accepting transfer requests from existing members, but we are accepting new applications for it. But that is unique. The more average thing is that I like to wait usually within a week or two of the game's release. I'll create the unit in Vanguard. I'll start accepting applications. I'll start accepting transfer requests from existing TAW members. And as the game gets in, like, we begin heavy recruitment. And we don't necessarily set organized match times right away. Now, there's a reason for this. When a game first begins in TAW, we don't know what to expect from it. In TAW, we do require 2 organized matches a week, but that's for full divisions. When units are beginning in Vanguard, we need to try and find the best time for people within that game to meet. So the first thing we do is we recruit a whole lot of people. And we do that knowing that eventually, when the majority of that group decides what the best time is, some of the guys may have to leave, but that's a risk and a benefit that it's a calculated risk. So the first stage is heavy recruitment. It's called phase 1. And then phase 2 itself consists of the operational requirements that the team must follow once the team is actually formed and functioning. The team must have a minimum of 2 hours of match per week. It's up to the team members when to decide when those matches will be. It is up to the team members to do boot camps for new recruits, but Vanguard staffs will help with this. A lot of times the second phase involves us promoting a lot of drill instructors in the group. And we'd always like to start with DIs because DIs are the most valuable, unit in TAW, essentially. I mean, they are the first point of contact with new recruits. They do boot camps. They help form a person's idea of what TAW is like. I always tell people, if you want to see how one will stay in TAW, go see how high quality their boot camp was. If it was good, they'll be here for a long time. First impressions are everything, and that's a very powerful power that drill instructors have. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to continue? There's one more phase.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the second phase is that we're getting boot camps in. We're getting some very low-level staff like drill instructors, maybe some field leaders, and we're really trying to just build the team itself. Because in Vanguard, there are 2 things that we have to do. We build the team and we build the leadership. Before we can build the leadership, we have to build the team. You need people first. And we focus heavily on just overall arching recruitment in the very first and second phases. And moving on to the third phase, we build the leadership, we build the culture, we build the events itself. We help them work up long-standing, recurring internal events like tournaments that they can do, building permanent teams, building a leadership structure in terms of field leadership and battalion staff. And once that begins to gel and form together, we approach Army Command and we say, hey, this game is actually somewhat close to launching, and we give them a thumbs up or thumb down on, do we think this is most likely to launch? And at that point, a lot more effort is expended on it. Army Command begins to get involved. They decide what corps the division will be assigned to. We start to develop black page resources on the website to create their own divisional area for them. And then after all that's said and done, and everything's been approved by Army Command, the CIC, and all of the staff are in place, the events are occurring regularly, there's a strong membership base, then they'll be launched as a division.
All right. Now, let's say Joe Bob's got the game here, and he's the one that found this game, and he's the one that's been writing it, and boy, he just feels like, I'm going to be the DC, I'm the one that's going to be in charge here. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the guy who feels like, hey, I've found this game, I'm bringing it to TAW, and by golly, I'm going to be the guy in charge here? What kind of mentality things do you have to look out for?
Well, I think, yeah, what you're describing, entitlement, it's a nasty thing. It can be very nasty. But the nice thing is that we have a lot of history to fall back on. One of Fox's favorite tips that he'd like to give me, and you as well, is if you really want to test someone's dedication to TAW, just take them, put them in a position, and then take them out of it, or promote someone else above them and see how they react. If they are dedicated to TAW, if they care about this place, they are not going to react negatively. All they care about is TAW. If they care about TAW, they don't need a position, as long as they think that things are working well and they're participating in a way that that I mean, if you offer them a chance to participate, it doesn't matter if you give them a job. They shouldn't feel the need to be in charge, because in the end, we're all here to benefit the organization. The idea of servant leadership precludes us from having egos involved in saying, "Oh, I need this to make me feel better." If you want to feel better about helping the organization, then you don't care about being personally in charge. You just care that it's being run well. And that's the kind of emphasis in civic culture that we try to create within leadership in Vanguard. We don't care about people who want positions. I mean, I kind of laugh. I mean, I actually got an email from a staff officer a little while ago asking me to transfer to Vanguard, and he was interested in a command position. He didn't even really specify a specific game. He just said, "I'm interested in a command position." And I mean, the subject of the email did mention a game, but I mean, it was ironic because this is exactly the kind of thing we don't want to have in TAW. We want people who aren't interested in promoting themselves. We want people who are interested in promoting servant leadership. I always tell people the idea of leadership is you don't promulgate power downwards. You actually serve the people below you. You go to the people below you and say, "Tell me what to do. You tell me what I can do for you today." And you pretty much take orders from below. Now, granted, sometimes you have to make a hard call, but most of the time you're serving the people beneath you. So yeah, people who get entitlement ideas, they don't last long in Vanguard, and it's very easy for me to see who they are. And I mean, I appreciate having them around. It's nice, they are welcome to be members here, but we don't have time for that. I'm sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
No, that's perfect. And Vanguard is kind of unique because the next division commander, TFL member, might be a recruit that's only been here for maybe 6 weeks, maybe 12 weeks, maybe 16 weeks. What does that do for TAW in your opinion?
That is probably the most useful thing to do in Vanguard. It's not that I am biased against existing members. I love existing members. It's nice to have their advice, their help, their insight. But part of moving forward and part of what we call progression in TAW is fresh blood, new ideas. Without new ideas, which only comes from new members, we'll stagnate and die. And one of the only reasons that we've hung around for 10 years, people look at the TAW Top 100 and say, "Oh, it's terrible that, only the really top 30 guys have been here longer than 4 or 5 years." I look at that and I think of it in a different way. I think of it like, yeah, there is some high turnover, but on the other hand, we're staying strong, we're still around, we are growing, and it is net growth. And having lots of new people come in is a very beneficial thing. So with recruits, oftentimes recruits are the best people you want to put into higher up leadership positions, provided they make it to PFC, they put in their time as a drill instructor, they show their dedication. You can train them. They don't come with any preconceptions. They don't come with any entitlement syndromes. They don't come with any of the other problems that an existing member might have. And you can train them and work with them and mold them like clay, kind of. And you can shape their impressions and what it means to be a leader in TAW without having to fight against any of their previous experience. But probably the most useful thing about that is I'm all about growing TAW externally. I don't like to cannibalize our membership. I mean? And our job in Vanguard isn't to try and convince existing members to transfer there. If they want to, they're more than welcome to, but we're not out there to actively seek and recruit members from existing divisions. I want to see TAW grow as a whole. I want us to bring in more people. I want to see us hit 5, 10, 20,000 members. And the only way to do that is to constantly bring in streams of new people from outside to augment our existing members. So that's another long-winded answer for you.
Well, that's perfect, though. Again, these recruits, they're the lifeblood of TAW. New ideas, just new enthusiasm, bringing it in and lighting this, being the spark that lights the fire and keeps it going. Let's just talk about what might be some reasons that a game might fail. I'm sure I know I had my own game failed for a reason, just not supported by the manufacturer and a developer. Give us some reasons that a game might fall, and who makes the decision, and how is it made?
There's only two reasons that a game will fail in TAW. The reasons are either the people involved or the game itself. Now, I mean, obviously, it's pretty wide encompassing, so I'll expand a little bit here. Within people, You can have leadership failures. You can have civic culture failures. You can have all kinds of drama. You can have all kinds of spats, immaturity issues, dedication issues, people flaking, all kinds of problems with regards to that. If you can't get a dedicated group of people together who want to meet twice a week and who will put in the time for it, then it could be the best game in the world and it will fall apart. We've actually seen this before, and it's a really sad situation. If the community isn't large, this is another way that people actually make the game fail. It's very sad. A lot of people blame the game in those situations. It's not always the game's fault. Um, the game itself may not have been marketed or properly advertised, but that's it's due to a lack of community that a game will fail, and that's a personal human failure at that point. The failure to get the game out, failure to advertise it heavily, the failure to have a robust community. The other kind of and of course within leadership, you can have people who refuse to lead the group. And after a while, it's up to Vanguard and Army Command to say, hey, look, this game's been in Vanguard for several months. We don't have people who are willing to step up and take leadership positions, who are willing to do the jobs that need to be done in it. And we're not going to get them from the existing people who are there. We're just going to shut it down. And at that point, Vanguard Commander will go to Army Command, and Army Command will go to the CIC, and they'll confer amongst each other, and they'll say, hey, look, this game, it might be great, but we have leadership failures. No one is willing to step up and run this place, or it looks like there's not a big recruitment pull, or this is not big enough, it's not getting fast enough, and we're gonna have to shut it down for human reasons. Game reasons are a lot easier to actually cite. I mean, there's been a lot of games that have been destroyed by lack of developer support. One you're talking about, Stalker Shadows of Chernobyl. Another one, beautiful game, totally got destroyed by the developers. Section 8, number 1. Wonderful game. I played in the beta for that. Absolute wonderful game. And it was destroyed by Games for Windows Live. The servers wouldn't work properly. The VoIP wouldn't work. There were port issues with Games for Windows Live running weird ports and processes. And so, yeah, and in that case, it's a lot easier for Vanguard staff to go to Army Command and say, hey, this game is great, but there's no support. It doesn't work properly. It's going to hinder recruitment. It's already destroyed the community. Let's shut it down. Army Command will go to the CIC, and they'll confer and pull the trigger that way.
Yeah, I know when mine failed, or the game that we were trying to bring in, we were able to keep a core group together, and actually, I stepped into Vanguard, but the other members of the team stuck together and actually developed another game, which did finally launch through Vanguard. So that was unique, because you build something in Vanguard. I think when you start a game there and you kind of get the fire lit and you're bringing it along and you're working it and everybody's working so hard, it really builds a sense of camaraderie and a core spirit there, and it builds a great team and a great foundation, something that we didn't always have when we started games without Vanguard. When it just launched, we had a lot of entitlement in place, and a lot of issues and problems sometimes. I remember WoW, the first time WoW came about, it failed, just for the reasons that we've already spoken about. So, well, it's been very informative, and I think about time to, anybody have any questions? I'd like to throw it out to the audience here. Anybody have a question they'd like to ask?
Fräulein Breck?
Go ahead, Fräulein.
I would just like to ask, obviously recruiting is a massive part of any division. You've obviously got a lot of experience in it, and what would you say is the most important thing about the process of getting recruits into a division?
As Brave was probably chuckling behind his mic, I'm very big on recruitment. I love it. It's the favorite part of my job, meeting new people. It's just, I'm insatiable. I'll just keep pulling and pulling. The most important thing about recruitment, and this is something that I love to talk about, I love to have a pulpit to talk about this, is never ever believe the old false, I don't know, maybe euphemism or whatever you might call it. If there's a lot of people out there who believe that we should embrace quality over quantity, or that we shouldn't try and recruit a whole lot of people, we should only recruit the very best. That's great. You should have lots of quality, but the only way you can get to quality is through quantity. The number one thing, the most important thing about recruitment is recruit everyone. You can always discharge or kick out someone, but you can't create recruits out of thin air. And always cast a big net. Recruit every single person you see. And just in your mind, think to yourself, for every 10 people I talk to, maybe one will be interested. For every 10 are interested, maybe one will apply. For every 10 will apply, maybe one will, respond and come back. When you work those kind of exponential figures in your head, and you put that kind of effort that's in response to that, you will see a big return on your recruitment efforts. But yeah, the biggest piece of advice about recruiting is the never be snobby about recruiting. Recruit every single person you see, because we can always get rid of people later, and we can always trim down the fat later. But you can't just create this stuff. And believe me, uh, from a mathematical standpoint, larger groups always yield higher quality statistical results in terms of like diversity and quality. I mean, it's just absolutely, that's the way it goes. The bigger, the better, by all means. Never limit your recruitment. Shoot for the stars. If there are people playing in your server and one of them's not, 39 of them aren't in TAW, then you recruit all 39 of them. So yeah, that's pretty much my advice.
Yep, I remember hearing Fox tell me, cast the net wide, and like he says, you're going to draw a lot in, and you'll keep the ones that the quality players and or the quality people, and the others will go away on their own, most likely. Who else has a question?
Grape jelly break.
Go Grape.
I'm a recruit actually, but I was wondering if there's any news or you could describe the process on games that are in the Vanguard division becoming their own division.
Absolutely, sure. One of the games that is actually close to launching right now, and Army Command's pretty much already, confirmed that we're going ahead with this, so we can talk about it. If I can't, I'm sure Brave will stop me since he's sitting here in channel. Brave.
Sorry, I missed that. What?
I was gonna say, I'm sure that it's all right at this point to talk about Bloodlines, unless it's not, right?
No, you're good.
So Bloodlines is probably the #1 group that's close to launching in Vanguard right now. In fact, they'd probably be launching within the next week or so. I'm meeting with Army Command to discuss that. I think today, in fact. And that if you take a look at that unit, they've got 78 people in the black pages. They have almost every single position filled. They've been doing regular events for a while now. The staff have spent some time in their individual positions. They're not brand new to it. That's the kind of end phase. When you're looking at a group in Vanguard that is like that, you're thinking to yourself, wow, they're close to launching. And believe me, we don't sleep on this stuff. We keep very close tabs. I send status updates on every single unit in Vanguard at least once every 2 weeks. I try and meet with Army Command once every week at least, but I send them emails about once every 2 weeks on everything that's going on in Vanguard. Taking a look at Bloodline, that's what a unit looks like when it's ready to launch. Another unit that's actually close to launching is Company of Heroes. And one thing that you need to realize about it is not every game has to have North American and European groups. In the case of Company of Heroes, the North American community is almost non-existent because they moved back to an earlier game. And the European battalion is huge. There's almost 50 people in it. And they will probably launch with primarily just a European group and maybe a small NA squad. That's another game that is actually close to end phase. It doesn't look the same, but that is another game that looks like, hey, that's how we know that the position people have been there, been meeting regularly, they have a good established culture, lots of events that they're doing. More beginning phase game. Looking at Homefront. Homefront launched less than a month ago. They've got 16 members now. We're still sort of in the recruitment first phase with them. We have regular set match times, but the matches, we don't run internal events. We just run recruitment events on the servers with them. A more immediate new phase game is Crisis. They only have 4 people. It's not even clear, if they'll survive or not. And that's kind of a more iffy game at this point. And I mean, that's a brand new game. We have 2 games that are opening up this next week. Brink and Section 8. Those will be brand new babies in TAW, you could say. So I mean, those are like the different life cycles of the current games of Vanguard. And World of Tanks is kind of a medium phase game. They're fairly large, but we still need to establish more staff. So we have the entire life cycle of a game represented by all the current groups in Vanguard.
Yeah, and every one of them it's a lot of work, and it's it's a lot of work by your staff, but at the same time, it's the people in the individual games that have to make it work, and that they have to take the reins and go with it. Any more questions? All right then. Well, that concludes this TAW University. I appreciate everybody showing up. Feener, thank you for your input.